my creative friends, welcome to the studio, and today I'm mixing it up by creating a little mixed media piece, and I'm using some flowers from my yard as inspiration. Look at these beautiful hydrangeas that are in my yard. I have these shrubs, and these flowers are bright white flowers during the summertime, and then as the season changes and the weather gets colder, they change from being these lighter shades of pink to these beautiful shades of raspberry, all the way to these dark brown shades, and they last this way all winter long. And they made for a wonderful inspiration of creating this fun little whimsical piece of these hydrangeas. I'm going to show you how you can create these hydrangeas using one brush, and then I'm going to show you the mixed media steps of how you can add all these beautiful textures by using some minimal amount of tools. Well, let's get started. I'm going to show you the first part of how I begin by toning the paper I'm painting on. For this project, I'm going to be painting on paper, and this is the new mixed media paper that I had received, this pad, this mixed media rough from Canson. It's a nice weight, it's 114-pound paper, and I like it because I like the smooth quality of it. I really enjoy doing acrylic paint on a smooth texture, and paper works really well. I even like this better than doing it on canvas, is to paint either like on masonite board or a watercolor paper, a mixed media paper that's smooth. I started out with sketching my piece, and now I'm just going to do a quick underpainting, and I'm going to be using the color of the basic Liquitex color and the color of the burnt sienna color, and I'm going to just tone all of my paper doing that first. So I'm going to load up a little bit with water, and I'm just going to brush this all over my piece to do the base coat or the toning of my paper. So everything is going to be this color to start with. The toning of the canvas is done, or my paper's done. It's all dry, and I'm going to start doing some of the base coat underneath color painting first. And the reason why I tone all the paper that color first, well, because of the colors I'm using are mostly this russet tones here and the greens. Those are going to be kind of the opposite color, so it's going to help make it pop. But I start with that color first before I add any of the other ones. I might see some of it peeking through on the end, but it's just going to help with that whole layering process. Like, I'm not going to see a lot of white underneath my hydrangeas because they are a darker flower. So that's why I'm going to start with that first, the toning part. And now I'm going to start layering on the base colors of what I want to start with. These have a cone shape to them. I'm going to kind of pay attention to that a little bit. I'm going to take artistic license and do them the way I want to. But I did do a little bit of a cone shape on some of them, but to fill it in, I can also make them a little bit more roundish as well. So in the end, it's going to have a hydrangea feel, but I may not be painting them exactly how the original flowers are or the actual flowers are. I'm going to just start with doing a dark base color, and I'm going to be tapping some of this in randomly on my flowers where I want them. I'm not looking for them to be perfect. I'm just popping in a shape. So here's my bowl shape. I'm going to have that underneath there. And these are just the beginning blocks of starting my flowers. It's okay to have some of these open areas opened up, that's fine. We don't need it to be completely covered. This is just the beginning stages. And I had originally drawn in some of those cone shapes, but I know my flowers will probably be a little bit larger than what the underneath painting is, and that's okay. Now let's go ahead and put this underneath part here of the base part in, and I'm going to be starting with a little bit warmer shade of brown, a little red brown called light cinnamon color, I believe is what I have on there. And I want it to be a slight different color than what my flowers are going to be. In the end, it's all going to have its own coloration anyway. This is just the messy stage. I'm not looking for anything perfect or refined. I'm just getting those layers on to build up my surfaces. Okay, so there's that. Now let's work on a little bit of the table as well. And I'm going to be laying in, I think I'm going to use this color here, this color by Liquitex Basics color. What color is this? Oh, aqua green. This would be kind of a nice little color because it's going to have the reddish browns. This would be a complementary color. I'm not going to rinse out my brush though. I'm going to keep my brush still a little dirty, mix it up. And when I'm painting my table underneath here, I'm going to be going back and forth, vertical this way. I mean horizontal. Oh, wrong direction. I told you wrong. I'm going to be making this. When I drew it, when you're deciding where you want your lines to be for your picture of where your table's going to be, you always either, it's like kind of a rule of thirds. So it's like a third, and a third. Usually you don't want it to be right in the middle of your painting. So I chose the lower third to have the upper part give me plenty of room for my flowers and that background be up above. So I'm going to be doing mine more at that lower third. So however you set yours up, it just kind of depends on how much of the top, how much of the bottom you want. I'm going to rinse my brush out a little bit, and then I'm going to be starting on my background up at the top. And when I do this, I'm going to kind of try to focus on maybe having more of a directional pull this way, but it doesn't really matter. This is just the beginning steps, but I'm going to be starting light. I want a lighter background, and I'm going to be putting that light background in. Now this part, I have a little bit of water in it, so it's not too opaque. And I'm just coming up to my edges and just kind of going next to them. I'm probably be going to paint over them. Again, this is just laying in the beginning of the colors. This is what we call kind of that messy look, and we're just building our layers. That one looks really funny, doesn't it? How narrow it is. Yeah. They all look bad at this stage, so give yourself some grace, give yourself some time to play with your paint. This is all about learning and playing. The more you do this, the better you're going to get. And even for me, I normally paint in watercolor for the last few years. I've done a lot of watercolor painting. So when I get my acrylic paints out to do something like this, it takes me a bit to get back in the groove again of how to lay things out again. I'm going to give this a dry, and I'll be right back. Okay, it's pretty much dry, and it looks absolutely ridiculous. It looks like perhaps a 5-year-old did this painting. You got to trust the process with this one. It's just the first layering process. Now I'm going to come back into my background. I'm going to work on that again. And I'm going to be, the color I'm using, my light color is called Light Buttermilk. I'm going to save the brightest white till the very end, and I'm going to be working with these colors first. So I'm going to come back in and make another go around. I'm using big brush strokes and varying my strokes and adding some interest that way by keeping my strokes loose and not very complicated or sophisticated. I'm just going in and adding those extra strokes. I had a little bit of water to my paint too. It's not so opaque. Great. Now let's take a look at this container here. Let's reclaim some of the space that I kind of took away. Now I didn't really brush or wash my brush out. I just picked up a little bit more of that paint. So I do have some of that buttermilk color coming through with this. And I'm just going to reclaim some of that space that I had covered up. You can pick up a little bit of the dark too, if you want to. This is kind of like dipping and grabbing. Okay, so there we got that part done. Now let's reestablish and add another darker layer to those flowers on the top that look so funny. Let's take some more of this burnt umber color and let's dab in another area of the darker color. So I want that to be the darkest area of what you're going to see in the background by the flowers. So that's going to be far back into the holes of the flowers. So I want to have kind of a nice sense of depth back there. It's okay to go over your container as well, which is because your flowers are going to go over it. And I'm just slipping and slopping now. We don't want those to be too pointy. Right now they look hilarious with the way they are kind of looking now. They look rather hilarious with those little pointy. It kind of reminds me of a crown. Oh gosh. So I'm just doing really messy style here and just getting some of that color on. All right. And I'm going to develop those more as we get more of a structured look. Now let's go back into some of that aqua color again, that bright green color that we had used down here. And let's add another layer. My brush is still dirty. I still have a little bit of that brown in there. And I'm more of just kind of scrubbing it in. I don't have a lot of paint on my brush. I'm really hard on my brushes. I don't use them necessarily I'm not delicate with them at this stage. So I always use kind of inexpensive brushes when I'm doing mixed media because I'm hard on my brushes. Well, let's give this another dry and we'll come back and look at it again. Let's work a little bit more on the bottom. I gave everything a dry. The reason why I'm doing that in between my layers is if I keep on adding more and more paint while everything is still wet, it all gets very muddied together and it doesn't give time for those separation layers to lock down and get dry. So when I build on top of them, I can get little peaks of that color and layer my colors as I go. By letting things dry and then applying more color. If I do everything at once, it's all just going to get muddied together and it's not going to have any of that real pretty subtle look of where you get those very beautiful shades of in between colors that you see here. It takes a few steps to get there, so I'm going to be doing those or layering those on as I go, but I'm allowing my paint to dry as well. So I'm going to work a little bit on here. I'm going to be bringing in some brighter colors. I have the citron green, a little bit of the sapphire blue, and I'm going to be using, I believe it's Bahama blue as well. So let's mix some of those colors on the top. I'm still using my big brush, and I'm going to be dipping, and it's kind of slightly dry. I'm going to be still using that back and forth motion. And I'm not wanting to cover up everything that's underneath there because I worked so hard to get that underneath there. But I can layer this on. There's some ways too that you can also take off paint. Like if you get this on and you're like, oh, that's too dark. A great tool to include are these, they're actually a pottery tool that you use for clay. They make great little scraping tools that you can move color around and scrape back in to your paint and create some texture. Mixed media has lots of different ways you could do it. You can go for texture, color, all of the above. I love texture, so I like adding those little bits of the texture as well. I'm carving back into my piece a little bit. It's okay too to dip back into your paint that you've already underneath there that you've used, and I'm going to be adding and using my brush very rough. Like you don't want to do this to really expensive brushes. I buy inexpensive ones at Walmart a lot of times. The Lane Nickel ones is a brand that I will pick up that's inexpensive. So I can use them this way and not feel bad about it because that's the type of painting I'm doing. Ooh, I love the look of that. Isn't that so pretty? Hopefully you can kind of see how the layers are starting to build. This is also a time, if you want to try a little sgraffito, you can. Finding my little stylus. I didn't do any of it in this one, but you could take your stylus and then do some writing in here, which is just think of a poem in your head. I've been reading There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly. I don't know why she swallowed a fly. Perhaps she'll die. It's one of my granddaughter's favorite book series, and when I've been visiting her, we have been reading it, and it's in my mind. It's just a fun children's story, and she loves them. She's learning about reading and all that rhyming stuff. Well, okay, so that's, you can't probably see it now, but if I pick up just the tiniest bit of white, I can go over that. And when I pull it back, either with a tool or a brush, you can pick up some of that little writing that's underneath there. Oh, mixed media is about putting the layers on, seeing what you get. adding more, taking away. That's what's going to give your piece some really strong interest. Okay, and I even have a little bit of that brown in there. That looks good too. Okay, I'm gonna stop right there for that. Let's work a little bit more on the background. Perhaps I'll just pick up some more of this off-white. I have some of the green still on there. We'll see what we get. And let's lay in another area. I'm liking it. It's picking up some of the colors that I had used down below are starting to pop out, and that's fine by me. I think that kind of unifies my piece too, where I have some of the color that I'm using someplace else and bringing it up. Okay, but I can still see some of that rusty goodness underneath there from the original underpainting, which I think looks fabulous. Okay, let's let that dry. Now, let's do a little bit more work on the front of this. I am going to rinse my brush out just a tiny bit. Rinse it out, and then I'm going to give it a squeeze to try to get most of that water out of there. Okay, and let's pick up some more of the light color. I want to be able to have this, in the end, be more of a lighter look, but I wanted to lay that darker underneath there first so you could see some of the texture and depth to this. So I'm going to reclaim this space, add it over, add some contrast. I'll probably let that dry. See where that ends up. Okay, that looks good. Now, as you can tell, my pieces are going to look completely different. This is the one I did first, just to get my feet wet again, get my paints out, and give it a try and get started again. But this piece is going to look different than this one. I cannot make two pieces the same, but it's not, I'm not expecting myself to do two pieces the same. I don't want them to be the same. They're going to always say they're not identical twins, but they could maybe be sisters or cousins in the end, and they will look great. I'm going to start some of the process now for these hydrangea flower clusters. And I'm going to be using some colors. This is one of the ones that I like to use from Golden. I have a few that I really, really like from Golden. And this quinacridone magenta, it's a fluid color, is so pretty and worth the money. The other color that I buy from Golden's, the fluid colors, is the Pyrrole Red. Two really great colors. I love them both, and I use them. I will spend the extra money to buy them. They're just beautiful, and I can't get those colors in any other way. They're just so vibrant and beautiful. Now these colors have some of that these flowers have some of that raspberry feel, and I think that quinacridone color works really well for that. But these flowers also have a lot of the brown. As these flowers age, they originally start out with these bright white flowers, and then as they age, they start getting more of this raspberry pink color to it, and eventually they will be all of this color all winter long. They're gorgeous. They're like a raspberry hydrangea bush. They're so beautiful, and they are just at a prime color right now for the fall. I'm going to be using also a red color. I'm going to use kind of a darker red, matted red look called Heritage Brick. I'll be picking up some of the other colors too, that light cinnamon color, probably a little bit of the burnt umber color, and mix them as I go. So when you're doing a hydrangea flower, the petal flowers, the brush I like to use the most is this filbert brush. It has this rounded edge here, because what that can do is it can help me build my flowers easily, because I'm going to get the benefit of already having a built-in petal shape with this brush. What I normally do is I mix two colors. There's a rust here. Let's see, I put two colors on my brush. So let's do this rusty red kind of color. Let's do a little bit of the quinacridone red color, a purplish magenta color. And I have my brush double loaded. You can go like this first if you want to spread your color out. But what you want to do is you're going to start from the outside of your petal, and then you're going to pull it towards you. And by doing it that way, you're going to get the shape of your petal already built in. So the rounded top is already going to be there, and then you pull it towards the center of your flower. Now you don't have to be perfect with this, but what you will see me do is I will by going back and forth right away, you won't get as much striped color. Let's see if I can show you. More of a variegated look here. I've probably not done my brush back and forth on my palette first. I've just stroked in my colors, so you're going to see that variegated look. The ones that have more of the smooth or one color tone, that I've probably done that brush stroke on my palette before I put it onto my paper to get that smoother look. But it doesn't really matter. These are just the beginning ones. I'm not going to get this all done in one layer, and I'm going to be overlapping. So even though these petals have these little individual petals, I believe they have 4, is what they have. In the end, it doesn't really matter if you do it technical, because we're going to be overlapping, and you're not going to probably see the whole flower. You're only going to maybe see 3 in that one. But the idea is to just move quickly. And I spin my brush too. Like often I'll flip my brush so that my color gets a little bit more variegated. It does sometimes, it looks pleasing to the eye. Like if one area has a set darker area, like this one here where it's more brown and then it switches to more of this raspberry color. Maybe when you're painting it, you might have one area that is more brown and not as raspberry. You can kind of tell I have a darker area here, a little bit lighter area in that area, so you can kind of variegate the look or the tone of your colors that way as well too. Let's see, I need to choose a different one. So those are the colors I'm going to use. I'm going to speed this video up a little bit as you just watch me build the first layer. Let's bring a little bit of this warm white color in, so it's a little bit brighter white. Let's put a little bit of that on the background too. Oops. I better change. This brush was my good brush for my flowers. I need to switch. If I'm doing that background, I need to switch my colors or my brushes. Go back to my scruffy brush and not my good one for my flower petals. Now I'm going right back up into that area of where I ended my flowers and just scrubbing right back along in that area. Okay, let's give this a little chance to dry and we'll come right back. Okay, so I've got a nice blend of colors here. I'm going to do another round of doing my hydrangeas. This time I may not be as sloppy. I may intentionally go in and let more flower petalish shapes be seen. So I definitely want to come up to the top and add some ones that are just kind of apart or separate, so you can kind of see those little splits at the end. I'm mixing that magenta color with more of a raw sienna color, and I'm going to be popping in a few areas that have more distinct look. So I'm going to continue on with that. I'll let you watch as I go forward. Put this raw umber and let's create some centers. So I'm just going to use the end of my paintbrush and let's tap in some center points for the flowers. This is going to help give these flowers a little bit more definition too, like all of a sudden they have a center. So that's going to help pop them out. As a stylus, let's see, to create a little bit smaller dot in that center. But this will just help layer in. I kind of like that smaller dot instead of the larger one. Depending on what your flower petals look like, you might want bigger ones, smaller ones, or even maybe a mix of the two. The actual hydrangea itself has a very small center. This just takes a little bit of time to do it, but it's well worth it, and it will give your flower more of a petal look to it. Okay, I'm kind of getting happier with this. Now let's add a little bit more dimension. I'm going to take some of my burnt umber color, burnt umber, add some water to it, and I'm going to kind of create this like a glazing, and I'm going to be adding some dimension because underneath here would be a shadow, because it's going to, the flower petal leaves would be creating a shadow underneath there. So I want to add some darkness underneath here on this container. Everything is kind of the same, you know, tonality wise in the background, so I need to be adding some depth and some shadows. So I'm going to be just layering my paint in, glazing it kind of where I'm adding more of a shadow there. It's still transparent. These are one of my favorite brushes too. These are those little triangle handle kids brushes that are a synthetic brush. They make a great little scrubby brush to get in and add some texture, brushwork areas. Okay, so that really added a lot more depth there. You can mix up your colors too, so you can add a little bit, you know, pick up some of the other browns that, ooh, that's a dangerous thing. That on my finger. You can pick up some of your other browns over here, perhaps that you were using on your flowers, mix them together, and bring that shadow down there too. It unifies your painting if you can mix some of those other colors around that you were using. So I'm picking up some of these other colors over here, blending them into that darker color, and then layering them on. I want that sense of dark there, and adding that quality of that this has some dimension. It's not just a flat container, it goes around. So by adding the shadows on the edges, that's going to help create that look of that this container is a round container and it goes around. This is kind of a dry brushing that's here in the middle. That's why these brushes work great for that. So I'm just kind of scratching and scrubbing. Add that darkness here. That looks good. Now let's give this container a little bit of shadow down here too. So I'm going to be picking up those same colors. And you can even pick up some of your color that you use, that greenish color first, but add a little bit of dark to it to create the shadow color. And let's lay in a shadow that's going to be underneath here. So it's obvious my light source is kind of coming this direction. This is very much kind of a scrubby, dry brush feel. Add a little bit more dark. Maybe add a little bit of this blue. Oh, I kind of lost all that color. Let's see. I guess I could use the Bahama blue. See what that looks like, if it looks too gray. This will be the darker side. This will be my lighter side. Okay. Okay, so that's adding some nicer contrast of this being a little darker, this being background is lighter. It gave some interest to my flower pot. Now let's work a little bit more on this background. I'm going to be picking up some of that dark again, and let's add a little bit of drop shadow here too. Perhaps it's going to be darker on this side of my painting. I can also take some paper towel after laying that color down and then pick it up and scrub it in. I'm adding a little bit more dark. Try not to add like a super halo around everything, but adding that little bit of darkness to and around there to give it a little bit more dimension, that background isn't just flat either. I'm going to be adding some lights in the end, so this is kind of adding the dark. And then I'll be adding some real dark when I use my graphite, my graph charcoal tool that I have. I'll be adding some real dark quality there. Yep, I like that look. Hopefully you can see how it's changing. Ooh, I had that on my finger. I'm a messy painter. Messy painter. Let's see if I can just kind of make that go. Okay, that looks good. All right, now let's do some line work. Let's do some line work. And some of my favorite pencils to do that with are the General's Charcoal, the 2B pencil, my Kimberly pencil. It's a graphite pencil, but you can get some nice charcoal qualities. And this is an art graph pencil. This is actually a tailor's tool, but it makes some real interesting lines. And I'll show you basically how it kind of looks. It has this quality of being, it's kind of fun to draw with it too, because you can get some real irregular lines. But what happens when you add water to it, it gets this incredible black line quality to it. So it's a water soluble pencil, and you can get some beautiful rich marks, but then you can also wipe it off. So you can take your paper towels and wipe some of that back. And this is where we call it the messy middle again. So I'm creating a little bit of a hot mess. But the great thing about this one is that it is acrylic paint. So I can always add, if I lose all of my lights, I can add them back in. And actually, I haven't really done a lot with the white yet. So this is just kind of that transition stage of where I'm going with it. Now I'm going to be taking my Kimberly pencil. So those are some really dark lines, but let's add a little bit of sketch. Like, so this is, I'm holding my pencil farther back and I'm twisting and I'm pulling my pencil and making some interesting line work. I'm going to do that down here too, so nothing is straight. This is where I love to do little scribbly bits. I'm going to make a pattern. So on this one, I made some circles. I'm going to create that, but I'm going to be twisting and turning my pencil so they're not exact circles. So I'm looking for irregular circles, and I'm going to be adding some pattern. This is where you can get as creative as you want. Mixed media is not like color book formula where if you do this, then you do this. It's more of like whatever makes you feel good. So if this type of craziness doesn't feel good to you, you most certainly don't have to do it. I'm going to be adding some white there. Now I'm going to come in with this pencil too, and I'm going to go, I'm still going to be using some of that twisty motion and not trying to do exact, but this is where I can kind of go in and do some more petal shapes. So I can define some of these. And what did I say there were? There were 4 on each of these. There actually might be more. Let's see. Let's take a look at what some of these petals look like. Not that I'm trying to copy them exact. They do have a round top on them. There is, let's see, how many are on there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like there's 5 on there. So I can kind of go for that 5 shape if I want to try to divide some of these up to give it some interest. I'm not looking to do like so many of them. I still want to have that painted look, but this is adding line work and creating some irregular petal looks, but not doing it exact. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, well, I'm going to speed this up and allow you to watch as I do this and adding these little line detail works between using my Kimberly and my charcoal and my graph. I've got them all 3 sitting in my hands, and that's what I'm going to work on now. Okay, so now we've gotten a lot of the tone. You can see how the art graph pen marker really made a difference and added the depth and the quality that I couldn't get otherwise. And now I need to add some of the brightness back in. So I've got that part done. Now let's water down a little bit of this white. Let's take some of this paint and water it down. And I want kind of a transparent-y look for those circles. So I want to paint them in, and I don't want them to be necessarily exact, so they're just irregular. This is my style. I like very loose type looks, so I'm not looking for exact circles. Okay, so put that down. Let's take some paper towel, put that over the top. Ooh. Well, that was kind of unexpected. That picked up the texture of the paper towel. I don't know if you can see that, but it is the texture of the paper towel. Let's try a little bit different paper. Let's use a little bit of deli paper. I might have some of that sitting. It doesn't have a texture, but that was kind of surprising, but I guess let's pick up a little bit of this. Let's use this a little bit and see if we can't smooth that out. Not that I don't hate it, it's just that I wasn't expecting it to show up, but that's kind of interesting. I could always take my tool, give it a scrape as well. Oh, interesting. Okay, so let's pick up a little bit more color for the background here. I'm going to come back into some of this blue, that light blue color that I had used before, some of the spa blue and a little bit of the white. And I'm going to be adding some of that to the background as well. So I need to add just a little bit of that sparkle back in again. Probably going to end up using that paper. I'm not wanting it to be perfect. And perhaps stretching it back to a little bit. Interesting, interesting, she says. Okay, and another way, spot of white. Another way, oh, and I'm getting red. I have red all over my fingers in different areas. I am terrible about not getting stuff on myself. And there's something about red that travels everywhere, for me anyway. Okay, so the other two tools I wanted to use, and I've shown you these many different times, are the woody pencils, which act like creamy watercolor. So color crayons, like creamy color crayons, but they make great line work, and I can come back in and add some extra lines and perhaps create just a real subtle pattern on my table. The more you do line work, the more you're going to find your voice and what marks are you, what kind of marks do you like? Are you an X? Do you like X's? Do you like O's? Do you like circles? Are you a circle person? I'm kind of a circle person. I like circles. I like little scribbly bits. And, you know, perhaps you're going to be adding some of those types of things on there. Now I can come back in then with a little bit of water and go over that, and they will soften back because they're water soluble items. So I can come back in and soften some of those things, but still add that bright color on the top. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I'm gonna have to go back in, now that I did that white, it's a little too bright. I'm gonna get back in with my charcoal pencil. Let's kind of establish the design around it. And I can also wet it and make those whites a little bit less poppy. For the final step for this piece, because it is mixed media and there's so many different water soluble items on here, I need to clear coat it, and my go-to is the Liquitex acrylic medium, matte medium. I like to just put it on my paper, and then I like using this little scraping tool to go across it, or even a soft rubber tool would work great too. A brush, you can use a brush, but you will see your brush strokes in the end if you use a brush. That's one of the reasons why I like using this tool, just to scrape it across, or a rubber shaping tool works great as well. But once it's sealed, you can go back in, if you use this matte medium, you can go back in and add more to your painting if you need to. If you want to lighten something or darken or just add whatever you might want to, you still can, because you can easily go over the matte medium. It's a great go-to sealer for me. Well, let's take a look at what this painting looks like. Some close-ups. Now that it's all finished, let's take a close-up look of all of those beautiful textures, the layering of the colors. Hopefully you can see that when you're looking at it very close up, that you can see all of the layering of the colors and all the little textures that I added really made a difference in this piece. If you enjoy doing art and crafts and you're new to my channel, come on over and see what I'm doing. I'd love to have more creative friends join me. Leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up. It really can help my channel grow. If you enjoyed this tutorial, here's a couple more at the end that you might enjoy watching. Well, thanks for joining me today, and hopefully you'll come back and join me again, and perhaps next time you'll paint right along with me.